Greg Smith here, national recruiting analyst with Rivals.com, and I am joined by a very special guest from UGAsports.com, Jed May, to discuss big news for Georgia as Georgia has landed four-star wide receiver Talon Taylor out of Illinois. Talented wide receiver. I guess, first of all, Jed, thank you for joining me. I know we got you on location today, but thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge get for Georgia's receiver class here in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And Talon is, one of the most talented wide receivers in the country. We have him ranked as the 29th player overall in the entire 2025 cycle. He's the number 2 player in his state behind Nate Marshall, and he is the number 6 ranked wide receiver, which, given what wide receiver has become and how difficult it is to crack that top group, that is very good. But Georgia gets their man, a guy that they had pursued very hard. We know Taylor has been very high on Georgia this entire recruiting process. So, Jed, from your perspective, what does this mean for Georgia to land this blue chip wide receiver?
Yeah, it's huge because Georgia's got the stereotype of not getting the top flight receivers. They're a run first school. There's the notion out there, 1,000-yard receiver in school history. So to land a guy like Talon Taylor, like you mentioned, number 6 receiver, but number 29 overall, just shows how good receivers are nowadays. But he's a guy that Georgia's prioritized for about a year now, and there was a little bit of I don't want to say a pause, but when James Coley took over, it was okay. What is he going to prioritize? And Coley made it very clear, very quickly that Taylor was going to remain a priority. So he's been one of the guys that Georgia's been after for a while, and like you said, they finally got their guy.
Yeah, and it's interesting as I've seen Taylor 2 or 3 times since this winter in person perform at different events. And I can speak to like the type of player and the mindset that he has. He's a smooth wide receiver. He is definitely a polished route runner for his age. The physicality will come. I think that once he gets into Georgia's weight program, and I think that going against Georgia's defensive backs on a daily basis will also help him kind of get used to the physicality and getting off those jams on the line of scrimmage. But when he gets a free release, like it's all she wrote. Like it's really hard to stop him. And it seems like every 7-on-7 event he's at, we see highlights of him. He was just down at, I think it was OT7 finals, making a one-handed touchdown grab in the end zone. And so he's very, very good. But it's the mindset to me that I think really stands out. I have a quick story on that. So I saw him at, I think it was Under Armour camp a couple of months ago. And he actually did not perform that well. So not as well as he had at some of these other events. And he actually came up and told me, hey, man, I feel bad about how I performed out there. The next event that I go to, I'm going to ball out. And that next event was 7-on-7 down in Florida. And he was one of the top performers down there along with his quarterback, Jonas Williams, right? And so I think that the mindset to say, hey, it wasn't up to my standard, I'm going to go out there and do better, I think will serve him well moving into a program like Georgia.
Yeah, and that's when you talk to recruits about Georgia, so much of the talk is they got the Georgia standard. They hold themselves to such a high level. And even Kirby Smart, when he speaks to the media, says we don't worry about playing, Georgia Tech where I'm at today or whoever. We worry about playing ourselves. So I think, like you said, that standard of knowing you've got to bring your best every single day is going to serve them well. Like you said, going against 5-star DBs every day, 5-star linebackers every day, competing with other highly talented receivers every day.
Right.
That's going to serve him pretty well in Athens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you mentioned off the top is that I don't say Georgia got the monkey off there, but I feel like I'm always writing this that, the knock on Georgia is they can't land elite receivers. But on one hand, that is true. But on the other hand, it hasn't mattered, right? They've been racking up wins, championship rings of conference and national championship variety. So we'll see kind of how this evolves. The question I wanted to ask you, though, specifically on that is that what is kind of that pitch for these players that they're trying to go after? People can see the offense, and that it's run based, and they do run the ball well. They throw to the tight ends a lot. So what has been the pitch for these guys as far as kind of opening the offense up?
Yeah, I think the main pitch is really just to get you ready for the NFL. Even if you're not putting up 1,400, 1,500 yards like Ohio State receivers, Alabama receivers, it gets you ready for the NFL. I had a recruit, it might have actually been Talon Taylor, in February during the festivities of the Senior Bowl. Georgia had a big recruiting weekend, and they were showing clips of Marcus Rosemary-Jackson and Ladd McConkey at the Senior Bowl performing pretty well. And they're like, yeah, you know why they're doing well? Because we do things like an NFL organization. We run an NFL offense. So I think that's the pitch is you're not necessarily going to get huge stats because Georgia spreads the ball around. They obviously run the ball a lot, like you said. But this is a system that is going to prepare you for the NFL. And now you got James Coley, who, not that Brian McClendon couldn't say this either, but James Coley has sent some guys along to the NFL and has recruited guys to Georgia and sent them to the NFL during his previous stop here. So I think that's the pitch is if you want to be ready for the NFL, Georgia is the place, even if you're not necessarily going to get the huge numbers that you might somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're going to continue to see Georgia continue to take swings at these big wide receivers. They've got a couple more big fish kind of out there that they're taking a look at as usual for both 25 and in the 2026 class. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But it's a huge day for Georgia football as they land 4-star wide receiver Talon Taylor. Make sure you check out UGAsports.com for continued coverage of this recruitment and more as we've got big June of official visits happening over at UGAsports.com. Also, keep it locked on Rivals.com for continued coverage of this and more, and we will catch you guys later.